Hello and welcome. This is another episode of the Scalable Multiplayer Game Design live stream. I'm your host, Eric Jacobs. Joining me today are Roddy Kiley, and Derek Reese, both from Red Hat. I don't know why their videos are not appearing in the app. Sorry. Already having technical difficulties, and we haven't even really
I mean, the standard. You throw programmers anywhere near video technology and we break it all.
Breaks.
Yeah. Oh, I know why. Video view standard, not gallery. Nope, that's not what I wanted. I do want side view. Side by side gallery. There we go. Hey, look at that.
Nice.
I'm gonna blame the tool and say that they changed where the buttons are. But anyway, so welcome back. I'm very flustered, as you can probably tell, just because it's 2020 and I'm pretty sure everybody's flustered.
That's just the way it is.
Yeah, it's just kind of, this is the nature of the beast these days. And so for anybody who's been sort of keeping track of what we're doing, right? We're trying to build this scalable multiplayer game with OpenShift, and we have started with a number of different technologies. We're using single sign-on as kind of a bridge layer to GitHub authentication. We could be using internal stuff inside that Red Hat single sign-on, which is, where is that? It's this guy, Keycloak here. But, we just decided to use GitHub because it's easy. We've got I don't have the lobby deployed because I was running that locally. And I can't remember last time we did do a little bit with AMQ and the chat, right? I think that was with the last stream.
I think so.
Or was that just,
yeah.
I don't know. But since then, we've improved the chat quite a bit. It now uses AMQP as the protocol and talks to AMQ. It doesn't use Ruby and Sinatra as the chat backend. But one of the things that we were going to try to do today from a technical perspective before we kind of get back into the design conversation is that we were going to try and take the AMQ broker, and Roddy had done the demo of the game server, which used AMQ, and he's spent some cycles on that, kind of shoving it into a container, and maybe we'll let him share his screen if you have anything, Roddy, to show about kind of what you did to shove it in a container. And then we're going to try and run it in the cluster, which should be fun and exciting, and get it to talk to the broker. And then maybe we'll hack some JavaScript together to try and actually press a button in the browser and move the little player character thing. So,
one baby step at a time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's just, it's like live coding, live hacking, whatever. So Roddy, I'll let you kind of drive. You tell me what you want to do. If you want a screen share, that's great. If you just want me to browse to the repo, I can do that.
Sure. I guess the easiest thing to do for now is browse to the repo. I'm still getting my environment up and running here.
Yeah, sure. So that's, I think, Orange Game Dev, right?
Yep. Or Red Hat Game Dev.
And so and I'll paste this into the Restream chat for those who are curious. So in Red Hat Game Dev, we now have this SRT game server, which GitHub has correctly identified as being C++. And so Roddy spent some time. You had to kind of back out some proprietary stuff on this side, or was that the client? I can't remember.
That was the client, yeah, still has some proprietary stuff in it. Like this, anything that was in here is long gone, essentially. And almost everything here was completely straight up open source license to begin with.
Oh, cool. Okay. Oh, yeah, I wasn't sure if it was either the client or the server that needed cleaning. But since we're going to kind of build our own client, if you will, that may not be a problem. And so I see this container build folder. Yep. Oh, and there's a Docker file.
Yep.
That's cool.
Yeah, pretty straightforward.
So it looks like off of Fedora, you're installing some libs and then just pulling in the code from the repo. Oh.
Yep. Yeah. So like basically this is kind of a reflection of the Linux box that I was using to originally port it over, because the original development platform was actually Mac OS X, I don't know, 10.7, 10.8, I don't know. Something way back anyway.
Some Mackie thing.
Yeah, and most recently had been like 10.11.6. So I put it over to my Fedora 30 box and then basically made a container which reflected the state of my box, essentially, which was all the dependent libraries up there that you see in the DNF command. And then as well, just recently, we added the ability to specify the broker URI via the command line, so that when you run containerized, it knows where to try to connect to. So you can see there on line 12.
Yeah. So it's going to pull from the environment.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Right. So then once
Sweet.
you can just basically deploy the image, specify the broker URI in your environment, and you should be off to the races.
Question. Do you know, so I see this UID 1000. Do you know if it's going to work? Actually, you know what? We're going to try it. Do it live. So you said this is on Quay somewhere?
It is on Quay.io, Red Hat-Game Dev, SRT game server. I think the tag is 0.6.
I'll also put this into the Restream chat for those who are interested following along at home.
So what was the concern there with the user UID?
Sorry, say again?
What was the concern there with the user UID?
So OpenShift by default randomizes the UID. So the question is going to be if this command is going to explode or not if it runs as a different UID. So
I think the answer is no.
Well, we're about to find out, and I'll do it locally. So you got one tag, which is 0.6.
Yep.
Run over here to my terminal. I will open a new terminal. I'll make my font way bigger. And if you're wondering, my file server at home is named Dumpster. So that's what that tab is.
Excellent.
I was not particularly creative.
Probably unique, however.
What's that?
Probably unique.
Probably unique?
Yep.
I mean, it's unique in my system here at home.
I don't know if anybody I've ever seen has used Dumpster as their computer name so far.
At least I didn't name it like Dumpster Fire. Credit.io, Red Hat Game Dev, those spaces are definitely going to make problems. And that was 0.6.
0.6, yeah.
So I know it's going to break because you said that if it can't contact the server, it breaks. But
yeah, you should get a couple of entries.
Pull the image and then run it with a random UID just to see if it doesn't break first.
I think it should be okay. I think the fact that I specify the user ID is not a requirement. Like the 1000 is not used in other places.
Cool. Yeah, it's going to end up being a permissions thing if it works at all. Let's see, username or UID format. Okay, so we want podman run -it -rm because I don't care about it later. 102467. Sure, some crazy user number, Quay.io, and we don't need to run a command, so we'll just see if it runs. Oh, it's too large. Well, okay, we'll go smaller.
Right, so connection refused, so that's a good thing.
That's perfect. Yeah, that's what we wanted. So it will run.
Yep.
It will blend, or it will kill if you're into Forged in Fire. For those Americans who like to watch weird TV about people making knives and swords.
That's the History Channel, is it? I think.
Yes,
is that right?
I think it is. It's honestly like, other than the one guy who like chops up carcasses with the things that they make, like to prove that they're sharp. The show's actually really good. Like, they give these blacksmiths very interesting challenges to make weird knives and swords and weapons and things in a very short period of time, and like it's just really interesting to watch how they problem solve. It's kind of like watching live coding but with fire and metal.
Yeah, except instead of fire and metal we have OpenShift.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so Mr. Roddy, one thing is going to be, so here's our broker.
Yep.
And let me go into the console for it, which for some reason the route, and this is going to be sort of feedback for you too, because I believe you work on this particular thing. For whatever reason, the route that it creates for the broker is not like in the topology view, doesn't get associated. So you don't see the little call out button-y thing.
That's weird. So does it need a specific label or something of that nature?
Yeah, it's something like that. I'm sure it's something like that. Let's see, service route, console. Yeah, so I want to go to the broker's console, and then I want to go to the console. And now I have to find the credentials, which
are in the secret. Yep.
Which I believe is, what did I call it? I called it the SRT broker credential secret because I am super obvious. And I'll scroll down here to reveal the values. I want the cluster password and the cluster user.
No, you want the regular user and the regular password.
Oh, I don't want the cluster one?
No, the cluster user and password is actually the password and username that the brokers themselves use to talk to each other when they are clustered together.
Okay. Information that is new to me. So if we look at the Artemisy thing, what we will see is I have an address already for the game lobby that I created using a CRD. So this is going to be like more power of operators kind of cool stuff. So if we dig into the cluster, if I go to the administrator view and I go to administration and I go to custom resource definitions and I go to active MQ Artemis address, what we see is there is a custom resource definition for an active MQ address. And I'll let Roddy explain what the difference is between addresses and queues and listeners and all that other stuff. But we basically defined in YAML, hey, we want an address named lobby with a queue named base with a multicast type. And when we create this YAML instance, the ActiveMQ operator sees it and basically configures the broker to have it there. So here's our thing that I basically wrote some YAML and magically it appeared in here.
Yeah,
and for those,
go ahead.
For those of you that are just joining us and haven't been on previous streams that we've done, all of this is OpenShift, right? Like none of this is like, oh, we sat and like configured some random app in a corner, right? You know, those are our like actual gameplay code. But all of this backend stuff, right? All of the Red Hat services that you see, that's all OpenShift. That's all, you know, pretty much, you know, multiple click and YAML file deployments. No special,
so
you know, magic.
Timing. So in the Ruby lobby game code, which is also on GitHub, and I'll put that into the Restream chat. So this is github.com, our Red Hat game dev Ruby lobby. So there's an OpenShift manifests folder that has exactly what it sounds like. It's a bunch of YAML objects that define things and stuff. And so the AMQ broker chat address YAML file, this is all it is. So when I create this YAML file, because I've installed the operator for ActiveMQ and because I have a ActiveMQ broker defined, which caused the operator to deploy the broker, when it sees this ActiveMQ Artemis address, called lobby in the SRT namespace, it's like, oh, I know about that broker. I'm going to configure the actual broker to do the thing that's requested. So what we can do right here is we can copy. I don't know why I did that with highlighting. I'm going to go here. I'm going to move this to this window. I'm going to open the folder for the Ruby lobby. I will make my font bigger, control equals. There we go. Let me know, gents, if that's big enough for you.
Good here.
I'm going to
copy
the chat address file, which is probably going to, I always do that. It doesn't really, I don't know how to do that in VS Code. AMQ, this is going to be the game server address, CR YAML. And so we'll copy this. And the reason that we're doing what we're doing right now is the game server expects to talk to a broker. The game client will talk to the same broker. And the end user, the game player, when they do things in their client, that sends messages to the broker. And then the game server picks up those messages and then performs whatever calculations are required to interpret the user's actions. It then sends messages back to the broker, which then go back to the client, and then the client sees, so to speak, whatever the result of the input was. So if I was playing a platformer and I hit the jump button, that would turn into the character actually jumping, and then the client would render the character jumping. So what I want is in the namespace SRT, I want a game server address, which we will call game server, and I'll give it the queue name of base. And this was supposed to be multicast, Roddy?
Multicast, yeah.
Okay.
So there's very specific names you need to use in order for the server to talk back and forth, right?
Oh, sorry. You're saying names based on the code of the server?
That's right. That's right.
Got
Exactly.
it. Okay.
Yeah,
So the address name needs to be.
So let's take, for example, the address that's used for commands that are coming in from the client to the server.
All right. Let me go back to the code, and we'll actually look at the code to talk about what you're doing.
Yeah. So go into the source, into application main.cpp.
Which one?
Main.cpp.
Main.
And lines 54 and 55 on the version I have. It might be a little different than that one.
54
there we go.
and 55.
Yeah, so we can see here, right, we have what used to be called destinations in CMS, which was the old client that's currently still being used. Speak, a destination rather than an address. So command.in is for incoming commands from clients.
So I'm assuming that's going to be command and in.
Command.in. Nope. Address name is literally command.in.
Oh.
Oh,
this is
right.
probably going to end badly.
Yes, this may actually.
And the queue name?
Actually, address name, command, queue name, command.in. Try that. Yeah, actually leave them as there. Because,
okay.
So if we just step back a second, like I said, so we look at what we're using the newer broker now called Active, which is based on an upstream project called ActiveMQ Artemis. And so Artemis is a combination of the previous ActiveMQ, which we call ActiveMQ Classic, that this was basically written against to begin with, and a combination of Red Hat's code base for something called HornetQ. So the community there had decided essentially that the way in which ActiveMQ was written, it was written before, multi-core processors were very common on the desktop, for example. So symmetric multiprocessing wasn't really a thing. So it's very heavy with mutexes and locks and very large thread pools, that kind of thing. Whereas HornetQ was kind of written with a more efficient core that didn't do that type of thing. So what they did, they took the HornetQ code base and they took the ActiveMQ code base, and over the span of about 2 years, they made them into this new thing called ActiveMQ Artemis, so that ActiveMQ as a message broker could move forward into this more parallel and concurrent future where we basically maxed out gigahertz and we're just throwing cores at the problem, right? So as an addendum then to moving into the future, they wanted a more flexible addressing model because basically Artemis now supports 5 different protocols: Core, AMQP, Stomp, MQTT, and OpenWire. So previously, ActiveMQ had been very Java JMS specification based with the OpenWire wire protocol. But now we had this new thing that was more flexible, and they found that the old JMS speak of topics and queues wasn't enough to describe and configure the flexibility provided among these different protocols. So now we have a new addressing model, which splits out an address name and a queue, and then you can also determine the castness, whether it's any cast, meaning when you send one message, it goes to one consumer, or multicast, when you send one message, it goes to all consumers, right? So because of that, there's a little bit of a mismatch here between what we were doing in the past individually with this game server and now what this new broker provides in the way of configuration. And so we had just moved to using this new broker. So I hadn't even really tested. I tested it to connect it to the broker, but I didn't actually test the usage at this point.
Sure, yeah.
So
we'll do it live.
We'll give it a try.
Yeah, no, this is exciting. So for those who were watching while Raji was talking, I created this tiny little YAML file that said, hey, I want this queue with an address. And almost immediately, like within less than a second, the operator said, hey, I created what you asked for. And now if we refresh the interface, actually it refreshed itself. So if I look in the addresses, now we have command in multicast command in. So
Right.
this queue already officially exists. Yeah.
Yeah, and the real gain here with the operator compared to like if you were not using the operator and doing it yourself is that the operator has knowledge of the deployment and knows how many brokers you've deployed and where they are, right? So,
Oh, I hadn't even thought of that. Yeah.
like in a lot of cases, so in a lot of production deployments, we might see, I don't know, 4 to 12 brokers deployed in a cluster topology in order to handle the load from all the clients coming in and be able to still be responsive, right? So normally what you'd have to do here is like either go to each one individually and create it, or you'd write a shell script, or maybe do some Ansible or something like that. But in this
Yeah,
case,
this looks
what the
way easier.
operator will do, yeah, it's exactly right. It's the whole idea of the operator. The operator just goes to every broker for you and creates the address, right? And then upon scale down or scale up, it'll also say, oh, hey, you scaled down and you scaled up. That's a new broker. We need to add the address to that one for you.
Very cool. So this, I'm actually going to rename this file to be game server commands address. And then I'll make another file called AMQ game server events address, YAML. And we will just copy and paste all of these. Oops. This is actually supposed to be called game.event.out. And this also multicast, I'm assuming, because all the game clients need it.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I could create this file from the command line, just like OC create -f whatever. But I'm gonna do it from the UI because I'm lazy. I don't think I'm logged in. So we click the plus button, paste this. I'm looking at the logs. As soon as I hit create, if I go, oops, game command, oh, duh, yeah. That's, see, look, error validation. That's awesome. OpenShift saved my butt. Game event out was already created. And then if I look here, this is like within a second or two, probably going to refresh itself. Oh, it's already there. Game event out. I'm like waiting for it to show, but it did it. Okay, so we have our things and our stuff. This is events. All right. Let's look at the project real quick. I don't know why it keeps highlighting everything. If we look at the services, and this is Roddy, I'll need your mental magic here. This AMQP 0 service is the AMQP acceptor that I had defined, right?
Right, and so essentially you must have configured it with exposed true, which basically tells it to automatically create you a service and a route so that it can become available outside the OpenShift cluster itself.
Well, that's so. I guess those two things are separate, right? If I defining the acceptor, which says, "Hey, listen on this port with this protocol," that results in this service being created.
Correct.
But then the expose true line is what results in project route. That's what makes the route. So if it wasn't exposed true, then that acceptor would not be available outside the cluster.
That's correct. So there's a couple of things here. So there's the acceptor, which is basically telling the broker itself to listen on a given port for a certain type of protocol.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And then there's the service level, which then sits in front of that. And in particular, it's configured to be a non-load balanced service, because the way that the service is provided with an OpenShift is not really messaging protocol aware. So the load balancing tends to confuse the broker if it's just round robin among the different brokers, because the brokers cluster themselves.
Oops, that's not what I want. It is a cluster IP with no session affinity.
Yeah, so that should be correct. And so essentially there's a specific label on the service which points everything that comes into that service to the one pod where that one acceptor is defined.
And that is the selector.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so you'll see here, it matches only pod named 0 in the
That's
stateful
right.
set.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's load balancing
neat.
over one pod.
Yeah, I did not
Right.
realize that that's what it did. So because this service exists, and because we're going to run the game server inside the cluster alongside the broker, we don't need to use the route. We should just be able to talk to the service.
Or even better,
on
you could talk directly
5672.
to the IP of the
To
pod.
the cluster IP?
The IP of the pod, because they're in the same namespace, right? So they share the same pod network.
I mean, we could do it by the IP, but the thing is, if for some
the IP
reason the
changes,
broker dies and gets
yeah.
restarted, the pod
Fair
IP will
point.
change.
Yeah, the service
So-
should work in theory.
Yeah, and so the other cool thing about OpenShift and Kubernetes in general is it does name resolution inside namespaces. And so
Right.
if we look at the end dots inside a pod, I'm going to go and just pick a pod at random. So even though this is an operator, it's still a pod running in the namespace. If I go into the terminal, so this is an interactive session inside this InfiniSpan operator pod. If I cat the resolve.conf, what we see is the expansion. So any host name will auto search SRT service cluster local to find the host name to get the resolution. And so because we have a service named blah, 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 I can just use the short name of this service when I try to connect to things. If we go back to the code that Roddy has and we look at the Docker file or the container file, what we see is it tries to connect to the broker URI environment variable. I will just call the broker URI, or sorry, I will set the value to be TCP : /
Service name.
this name : 5672. And then I guess, do I need the
You
wire
do need
format
the wire
stomp?
format stomp. Yep.
Yeah, okay. Cool. So because this container is running on Quay, what we can try and do is come over here to topology. Actually, I didn't need to do that. I can hit the add button. We'll do container image, quay.io, red hat game dev, SRT game server.
Yep.
06.
06. Yep.
Okay, and so when I hit the tab button, you see this little validated thing. It actually, OpenShift reached out and queried the registry to figure out like what is this image? What do I know about it? You know, what metadata is available from the registry? Oh, runtime icon. That's cool.
Oh, it's all new. Hey, try.
Where's the
There's even one
SRT
there for AMQ.
Beautiful.
Well, but I mean, it's not AMQ. It's like the game server.
Yeah. I want to take this second just to say thanks for all the follows we got. Tempest Drift and Jarbeck, Pyros, or Pyros.
Dude, yeah, thanks for watching.
Yeah. And we also got like a massive raid. I don't know if you guys saw like a minute or two ago. We had like 50 people like jump in and just see what's up with that. So thanks for joining us. If you dropped by and are sticking around.
Thanks so much. I don't know. I'll choose Tomcat just because it has nothing to do with what we're doing. Because why not? We can call it game server app. That's fine. It is associated with other things that will be called game server. That's also fine. Regular Kubernetes deployment is also fine. We don't need a route to the game server because nobody's going to talk directly to the game server. But what we do need is to add an environment variable on the deployment, and that environment variable shall be known as broker URI.
Yep.
And the value is going to be TCP : /
service name.
Of course, I've lost the service name because I wasn't paying attention. Services and AMQP service. Okay. 5672, and then we need this.
So the key part here, remember, is that so your Ruby lobby thing hawks AMQP, but the game server hasn't been updated to AMQP yet. So we need to add a new acceptor entry to the
What?
See,
I thought you did change it to be.
no, I started looking.
Oh,
into
it's stomp. No, good point. Okay.
Right.
Well, you know what? Let's break it and then fix it. How about that?
Okay.
Okay. So this is going to blow up because we don't actually have the broker listening for stomp yet. So this will
Right.
actually be an interesting test of several things. I'm going to go ahead and deploy this. And what will happen is we will see our Tomcat icon, which again has nothing to do with the game server because it's written in C. So it's funny that it's the Tomcat icon. And so it's container creating, which is just it's pulling the image into the cluster. And if we go to the log, what we see is it's trying to connect, and it hasn't exploded yet, but it certainly is not working.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the amount of logging in the game server is quite lacking.
Yeah. Maybe we can add some logging. Actually, what we could probably do is make OpenShift build the game server.
Yeah,
and then
good.
Deploy it. And so we can get to that in a second. All right. I'm going to do the right thing before doing the wrong thing. So you said that we need a stomp acceptor.
Yep.
I will add it to this file. We don't need stomp to be exposed externally. So I'm actually going to set that to false just to see what.
So also, I think one thing we talked about earlier is that the service won't be automatically created when expose is false. Just to give you.
Oh, that's annoying.
Yeah, and I think I've gotten that feedback a number of times now. It's the decision to do that made sense at the time when we were doing the development. But I think we're going to need to revisit it. So when we were looking at that, we were looking at some of our other products that have gone down this road with their CRDs and how they did it. And this was the route that they took. So we did the same. But in retrospect, like you said, lots of people find that really annoying because they use.
Well, because ideally you don't want to use pod IPs.
Because they vary tremendously. Correct.
At least the service IP, but preferably the service name. So, all right. The one thing that's marginally frustrating is right now the developer view doesn't have a good way to get to the custom resource definition. I can cheat because I have the broker here in my namespace, or the operator, I should say, in my namespace. And so I can like funkily get to it here.
Right. Through a few jumps.
In a weird way. Yeah. Otherwise I'd have to go to the admin console, which while it's called the admin perspective or the admin console, like you don't have to be an admin to access it. It just works better when you are.
Although for the access to the CRDs, you probably would.
Yeah, exactly. Access to the CRDs should probably work. Because we don't have to, we have read access. Anyway, whatever. So I'm going to try this. I don't know if you can tell me, Roddy, I don't know if the operator is going to go back and fix this or add it.
Yeah, when you click save, it should basically restart the broker pod that you have, I believe.
All right, give me a sec. I'm going to try to prove that.
Because essentially what should happen, like you should be able to change the expose and stuff on the fly and add acceptors.
I want the operator pod logs. I don't know if anything's going on in the chat or if you're watching the chat, Derek, but.
Yeah, I'm keeping an eye on it.
Okay, cool. All right, so when I save this, if we look at the operator, it says lots of things.
So let's see. So we see the broker SS1 is was ready earlier. See, starting SRT 3 lines from the bottom. SRT broker SS-1. So
Yeah.
the only reason that the broker would have moved from the ready state back to the starting state would be as if the pod was restarted.
Interesting.
Or unless, of course, it's spontaneously rebooted. But that would
be... Yeah, so here's
and I would hope that that's not the case.
All right, so here's the broker 0. So we should be good, although this is going to probably 503 me because the pod's not ready yet. Yeah, all right, so we're just waiting for... All right, that just came ready. If we go back, here's the console for this, and if we look at acceptors, hey, look at that, AMQP and stomp. If we go and try to find the game server pod, which is not Tomcat, the not Tomcat pod.
It's probably hung from the original.
You think?
It probably did, yeah. The amount of error checking stuff, like I said, this was a proof of concept at the time.
No, it's cool.
Amount of production ready code in there is pretty low.
All right, so let's kill it. Pew. And then it already started creating a new one. We'll look at the logs. Still doesn't say anything.
Well, yeah. Well, at the same time, we're still trying to connect to the AMQP service.
Oh, I need to change the environment variable.
Yeah.
Oh, good call. So let's see. If we go to the replica set, and then we go to the corresponding deployment, and then we go to environment, we will change this to be 5673.
And the right service name.
Oh, good point. This is why it's useful to have other people watch over your shoulder. Services.
Do we have? We should have the. I don't see that we have 5673.
I don't see that we have the service at all.
Nope, I don't either. So maybe the broker didn't restart, but it was said it was starting.
Well, the broker started, but isn't the operator what's supposed to create the service?
And it should. Yep.
All right, so let me go to the CRD and make sure. I thought I had created the instance. Well, I know I created the instance because it shows up in, well, let's think about this. It's in the broker definition. And if we look at the broker, it is set to be exposed.
Yep.
So for some reason, it is not.
The first thing to check is the actual broker itself. So you can bring up the log for the broker and look to be sure that the protocol itself got exposed.
Topology. Well, I mean, it's.
Oh, it's there, so we kind of know that it is. Yeah, that's a fair point.
So it configured the broker, but it didn't create the service.
Yeah, so it's an operator problem in that case.
Well, since this is stateless, we can do the dirty, and I can do this. OC status. Actually, let me do it from this window.
Yeah, there you go.
So I just deleted the definition of the broker.
The broker should.
Oh, there we go. The game server is really pissed now.
Yeah.
And so you see the broker disappeared really quickly.
Yep.
And so now we should also see that the
custom resource also went away.
Oh, what am I looking for? No, I wanted to look at the routes and the services. So the routes are gone, the services are gone. So now I can just create it.
Yep.
Really? Oh, sorry. Create the broker. If we look at the UI in the topology view, it's really angry now. So we go back to the broker. Oh, and I bet it's going to be also annoyed because we deleted something and then created the same thing with the same name.
That should be okay.
Failed to update the stateful set.
Because you deleted it? Oh, it should have cleaned up after itself.
Yeah, I might have done it too quickly, maybe. Oh, no, there it is. So here's the, wait.
That's the operator on the left there, right?
Yeah, we don't have the,
we
don't have the pods yet.
So is the pod attempting to start? Is that one with the exclamation mark we saw there?
No, that's the game server.
Okay.
Very angry kitty.
Just appears to be super angry. So when in doubt, we can do even more drastic things.
Go back another step.
Operators are also stateless.
And delete the CR.
Hey, look, it worked. I fixed it.
Oh, there you go.
So I deleted the operator pod. When the operator came up, it immediately found the custom resource instances, and then it tried to create the broker. And so when the broker becomes ready, Yeah, man, this is the fun of like cloud native and stateless. It's just like, just delete it. It'll be fine. It'll fix itself. It'll all work out in the end.
So if it hadn't, so in the case of the broker, one of the key use cases for a broker in general as a networking, I guess, component is for running stateful, right? So if you'd killed it off and it was stateful, what would happen because of the stateful set is that the PVC would remain mapped, which is the persistent volume claim for that pod would remain mapped to the same persistent volume, and the message journal that was associated with that broker before it was vaporized would still be associated with that broker name when it restarted, and you'd still have all your messages.
Yeah, so one thing that we did not do or that we did not ask the operator to do with our definition was we didn't ask it to create any storage. So if we look at our project here, the only PVCs we have are for the JBoss data grid and for the key cloak, because those two operators, the way that they're configured, they did that, but you don't see a claim for the broker. So as Roddy was saying, normally the journal gets written to the file system, which is mapped onto a volume, but because we don't have that, when we destroyed the broker, any messages that had yet to be processed would have been lost. I think we're good now. So we have that service. The game server is back to being happy, but it's still looking for the wrong port, I bet, because I don't think we finished.
No, we didn't change the service.
5672. Okay. So we need to go to the pod. We can go to the replica set. We can go to the deployment. We can go to the environment. We can change that to 5673. Oh, and the name is different.
And the name, yeah, that's right. Should we just put stomp where AMQP is?
Yeah.
Because there's a convention with how the naming happens.
Don't think that space is going to work.
Probably not.
Right, it should work. And so when we change this, immediately what we'll see is a new deployment's going to roll out. And so we see this extra thing that was fast, like really fast.
There you go.
Hey, look at that. It actually worked.
Yep. Fantastic.
Press Q to quit. I don't think that's going to work.
No. That's not a very cloud native way to quit your process.
Q. Q.
No joy.
No joy. But this is awesome. So it technically is working, right?
That's right.
Does it spit out any messages when it gets a message? Like,
it does not, but you could check the broker log and you could see that the server connected to the broker.
I was more going to say like, because the game server is not doing or telling us anything,
Gotcha.
Like we wouldn't know. We can look at other things, but anyway. But this is cool. Like, we're 44 minutes in, probably 20 of those were sort of BSing and chatting. So really in 20 minutes, we took like a random image and sort of got it going and used some operators to heavily reconfigure services that were already deployed in production. Like, if you ignore our clowning horrible production hygiene or whatever, like, okay, fine, we took a major outage for like 30 seconds of our infrastructure, the messaging broker, like chat went down for 30 seconds while we reconfigured the broker for whatever. But we did a lot of stuff with like very little code.
But even so, in the case of a real production deployment that had gone through UAT at some point, hopefully, acceptance testing of some kind, you would probably have a broker cluster, right? So you'd probably have more than one broker, and you do like a rolling update. And so, two brokers would stay up while the first two rolled down and restarted with the new setting, and the other two went down and come back up, so that in the end of the day, you wouldn't actually have any real downtime.
Yeah, and even more so in reality, even if we only had one, what we would have done if we realized that we needed to like sort of burn it all down is like we could have done some kind of like A/B-ish deployment where we spin up a new broker and then point all the services at the new broker and then do some kind of like there's a million ways that we could have done this that weren't as
It's
half
drastic.
butted.
Yes.
But yeah.
Gone are the days where your game services are down for 8 hours and all your players are on Twitter complaining about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've experienced that. That's
the super
not fun.
fail whale of waiting to get in. Was it a World of Q? Was the meme that was going around the other day when World of Warcraft launched their new expansion and like nobody could get in. Anyway.
Yeah.
So now that we have the game server running, how can we half-assed talk to it?
So you can go to the GUI for the broker, and you can check that the queues exist, which you know they do because you created them.
Well,
I'm trying to think if there's any messages sent in the beginning from the. So there's no messages sent command in. That makes sense, right? There's no clients. Just go to game event out. I don't know if there's any sent starting out. And no, there's not, because it's essentially waiting for somebody to join. Before, like if we look back to what we've done previously, like nothing happens here until that client connects. And then basically it kicks off the creation of the entities in the physics simulation. And then as soon as that happens, then there's some data being spewed out to the game event. Address,
so is there there's like command line clients for AMQP, right?
Yes. Well, for most of the protocols, and there's one in, like for example, for
this is
Core, there's one built in. Yeah, this is Stomp. So the tricky part is that the format of the data is binary protobuf. So it might be a little bit hard for us to.
Come on, bro.
Protobuf.
No, I'm just kidding.
Like ideally, what we could do, like if you wanted to jumpstart the process on a backend server.
Let's just prove that we can talk to the game server from a faux client. So what would be a command line Stomp client that I should try and use?
That's a good question. I'll go look and see if I can find one.
Oh, you don't know? All right. Well, let's command line Stomp client. Using the command Stompy. Oh, there's a Python Stomp.
And there should be a Perl Stomp. There's one of our very large
Perl?
scientific customers who have a very large deployment of Perl-based Stomp clients to talk to brokers.
That didn't work. Oh, it's probably like not the right. All right, Fedora, don't fail me. Although I am running a. That's what I feel.
Now, from the GUI, you can also send messages to those addresses, but it doesn't necessarily prove that we can talk to it over Stomp, because I'm pretty sure it doesn't talk to it over Stomp.
It does not.
Right.
What about Ruby? Stomp gem. Is this a thing? Of course, RubyDuck is slow. My favorite language, but many of the related services, much like the language, are slow.
Always take a quick detour into the game design itself while you're looking for stuff. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen. Oh, I need somebody to let me do that.
Not Tom. Well, then you might have to wait a second. Hey, look, Stomp, IRB. No, let's do pry. Require Stomp. All right. How do I actually use you?
So you probably need to connect, and then you may need to create a session.
Yeah.
There's normally a pretty standard.
These are the default parameters and do not need to be set for a client. Stomp client new hash. Okay. Hash equals hosts. Actually, let's do this. What's the login? Is that, do we need a login?
I think the answer is no. Because if not,
just put anything, I guess. So the host is going to be, and this is where I think we're going to have an issue. Project routes. We want the stomp one. And if we look at the details, oh, it's HTTP, thank goodness. Copy link address. And I'm assuming that this doesn't want, yeah, it doesn't want any of that stuff. So we got to get
So
rid
the
of.
fact that that shows that it's HTTP has no bearing on whether it's really HTTP or not.
It sort of does, because the router is not listening on HTTPS unless there's like a upgrade redirect.
With regards to HTTP or HTTPS, but the actual communication with the broker will be TCP and not HTTP.
Oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. Right? Let's see. So that's the host, the port. Why is there an underscore in the port?
And so as a result, you may not get through the route unless you're encrypted and have TLS pass-through configured using SNI.
I am pretty sure that when I did this,
did it work?
With the chat, it worked, I think, but we're about to find out the hard way.
As we always do.
I mean, why else would you?
I would have expected it to not
work.
Is
that a functional hash? Hey, look, that's a functional hash. All right. Client equals stomp, client new hash. Oh, that's what we want. Okay, perfect. Yeah, this should maybe work. Or it'll explode spectacularly because it doesn't appear to be doing anything right now. All right, let's try something different. Stomp. Client, new, Eric. Oh, user error. 80. Invalid message length, invalid content length received from blah, blah. Interesting. Not very useful error message.
Nope.
I don't really know what to do with that one other than
is there a way to see if it even attempted a connection to the server and see if it's just like not liking what it gets back or whatever?
Yeah, maybe if I look at the log of the broker.
The OpenShift or the OpenShift router even to see if it got that far.
The router won't tell me anything.
Unless you have the debug mode turned on. That's what we often do when we're debugging our connections. We'll log in and turn on the debug mode for the router to make sure that we're actually getting our traffic through HA proxy.
Connection failure has been detected.
So I think
those are the old ones now.
Yeah, I think that was from, I'd be pretty sure that was from the game server.
Yeah, because I just did it and it didn't spit anything out.
Yep.
So I think it's even before.
Yeah, even before you're doing your thing.
What happens if I just curl this? Never gets anywhere. Yeah, so it definitely doesn't work with HTTPS. So yeah, I don't know what's going on there. If I look at the other one, oop, what did it just say?
An exception code event was fired. It reached the tail of the pipeline.
That might be me trying to connect.
That could have been, yeah.
Let's try again. And we'll wait. I wonder if it's like
so
the socket's getting there, and then look, it just did it again. Okay.
Yep.
So curl is working. So we're clearly hitting the broker.
We're hitting the broker, yeah.
The problem is stomp.
Right, that's right.
Or,
we're not speaking
or at least
the right
the
language.
particular Ruby stomp client that I tried. What other options do we have? Let's see. JavaScript.
Yeah, this is where you chime in, chat. Want to see your bad ideas to try.
Oh, Stomp.js. I think I used this one before. Getting started.
This is where the money's at. Debugging code you're going to be putting into production at some point.
Yeah, ideally here, what we would have is like we'd have a nice little container we could launch containing all the clients. And then you could just like log into the terminal even in the client container and pick the client you want to use for testing. And then, use that then to generate some traffic, right? In the case of the broker itself can be used to produce and consume traffic, but only via the core protocol, which again doesn't help us in this case.
So you want to give me screen share permissions real quick while you're getting this set up, sure, so I can walk through game design?
Yeah, and I saw you'd made some additions earlier, but I didn't see what those were.
Do you need permissions to share?
Yeah, host disabled, attendee screen sharing.
I've made you a co-host. So,
there we go.
Look at that.
That'll do it.
You have a graphic. That's
awesome.
Neat.
You came prepared.
Yeah, I came prepared. Absolutely. So what I basically did here is kind of canonified and worked through our game design document that we're working on. So while Eric is getting a Stomp client up and running, I figured I will pop through it. Yeah. So we kind of, when you're building out a game like this, we kind of talked, I think, 2 sessions ago, a little bit about how you set up that game design. But it all starts with the document, right? And what you're doing is just kind of putting together all your ideas on paper so you can collaborate with your teammates and build out your vision. So first thing you want to do is kind of summarize what you're building, right? And what we're building is a massive multiplayer space combat arena. And we're really focusing on those large-scale battles, right? And we also want to add a little bit of level strategy, right? We're not just going to make a game that isn't fun to play, just to demo things. But we do want to keep in mind that what we're doing here is demoing the capabilities of OpenShift. So these are our design pillars that we've settled on. The first one being massive scale, second one being persistence, right? We want to be able to demonstrate that the universe that players are inhabiting is persistent and can live on OpenShift over time. Of course, we want player agency, right? We don't just want this to be, a demo where you click and connect and it says, hey, I'm working. You want to be able to prove, like, I can interact with this system and participate in it. And of course, strategy and tactics, because, what is a game without the layer of fun and intrigue in it? And of course, real-time combat. We want to be able to prove that OpenShift can handle the level of demand necessary with real-time games and not just kind of a turn-based, message service. So that first pillar, massive scale, that's kind of the thing with OpenShift, right? That's the important thing about cloud native development, is that scalability is now a known problem. It's not oh God, how many machines do we have to buy, and are these servers designed correctly to handle our server, and how do we have to write this code, work with the hardware we have and the budget we have, right? Now it's a lot more about making those intelligent decisions and trade-offs in a space where you don't have to own the hardware, you don't have to own the entire setup and infrastructure, but instead you can rely on the expertise and services of others and scale up and down as necessary, so you don't have those expenditures constantly costing you money as you're working through development, deployment, and your life cycle of the game. Persistence, of course, is important, like I said, because we want people to be able to experience that passage of time, but we also want to be able to really demonstrate, like, you can build a persistent universe, you can build a persistent world and experience with OpenShift and still roll through updates and be able to mitigate problems such as downtime or, large-scale updates and deployments that affect the entirety of your game. OpenShift can handle that with ease, and so being able to have that persistent universe makes that, apparent and obvious. Player agency, of course, as we said, is important because we want to be able to show that players can actually interact with the system. It's not just a passive demo. But we also wanted to be able to design the game where the players could choose their level of difficulty, where it's their choice of how much they want to involve themselves in the game. So when we're handing off this demo, and kind of showing it to people and having everyone, in the Twitch chat connect and play with us, it's not something where it's like, oh God, I'm in and I'm destroyed, right? But you'd be able to kind of affect and choose how you participate in the demo and still get a good experience out of it. This is the fun part of the game, right? This is the big player portion, the strategy and tactics. And we wanted to make sure that the way you interact with the game is very simplified. It's something that can be understood very quickly, but has a lot of potential for emergent complexity. And that's kind of one of the, beautiful things about game design, is allowing for that emergent complexity to really affect how players interact with the game and how the game evolves over time. So that means we really want to make it, where the player's input is positioning, right? You're going to be tapping on the screen, you're going to be clicking on the screen and directing where your spaceship is going. That in itself, right, is a very simplistic interaction, very simplistic way to be a part of the game universe. And yet it's going to have a whole lot of implications for the player. If you're positioning, yourself with another player in between you and a player that's attacking you, right, that player is going to intercept those different energy weapons or missiles or whatever else is going on. If you're able to time it right, where you're in a fast ship and they're in a slow ship, right, maybe their big cannon will miss or hit another player. And same thing if you're in a slower ship, right, putting yourself in the space to be most effective with your damage and make the best use of your time in the game and get the most resources. Those are all going to be decisions you can make simply by positioning and movement. And then same thing, of course, with your choice in repairs and upgrades as you make your way through the game. Of course, real-time combat's pretty obvious, right? This isn't going to be turn-based. You're not going to be tapping through a queue or anything like that. You're going to real-time be able to see everything unfold in front of you, which means, the OpenShift deployment, our game server, will have to be reasonably performant, especially at the massive scale that we're going to be operating and deploying on OpenShift. It's also important to receive that immediate feedback as well. We have a summary here that basically is kind of like what can the game, feel like if you're playing it. So I'll read that out real quick. You tap engage and watch as your ship warps into the battlefield. Within moments of zooming out to assess the situation, you get hit with a blast of red laser fire. The fight has begun. You quickly scope out another larger ship and flee behind it, successfully letting them take the hit from the massive blast of a quantum cannon from your pursuer. You arrive on the other side of the Patsy behemoth and unleash your missile barrage. The enemy is no more. However, you now have the problematic situation of needing to survive against your foe's shield long enough to upgrade and repair. So that kind of gives you kind of like that overview of like, what do we want this game to feel like when you're playing through it, right?
Dude,
and that's kind of like the big, that's the pitch statement, right? There's the hype, there's the excitement. Let's do it. Core mechanics, as we said, we got our massive scale, we got persistence, we got player agency, strategy, tactics, and real-time and combat. Our interface is all going to be mobile and browser-based, right? So that's pinch to zoom, tap to move. Same thing, you're going to click or use your scroll wheel. And then, of course, we're going to have our upgrade and repair dialogue as you're working your way through the game. So that's kind of a summary of everything that we've kind of built out so far. I don't know where we're at with our Stomp client here, but
I'm sort of doing okay, getting through it.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to check in with chat and like give us your opinions. Type on in there, tell us what you think. How do you feel about where the game's going?
If you're still listening.
Yeah. If I didn't bore you to death already.
I don't think you bored anybody to death. It's really just more. I don't know if anybody's really invested in listening to us blab.
I'm invested. I'm very invested.
Okay. It's also our job to be invested, though, so it's kind of there's that aspect of it. Let's see. Client activate. All right.
So you want to go ahead and take over the screen share?
Yeah.
Whenever you get the chance.
Let's see. You gotta find the Zoom window. Share my screen. It will stop others sharing. That's okay. All right. So I hacked together some local HTML with Stomp.js. I put in the broker WebSocket URL. There's apparently some error stuff, and then the client gets activated. So if I save this and then refresh it in my browser, come on. And then let me pull up the logs of the broker.
We also got a hello from Mohammed on YouTube.
That's
hey,
nice.
Mohammed.
So control refresh. Send an error frame to the stomp client. That's nice. So we're getting closer.
Yep.
Still didn't do anything, but at least we got an error. Remote disconnect. I don't know why that is. Any thoughts, Mr. Roddy?
Why you got disconnected immediately?
Yeah.
So think back to the configuration earlier and looking in the secret for the username and password. That probably will mean you need to pass those along as a part of the URI in standard URI notation.
Oh,
right?
That's lovely because everybody loves doing that.
Yeah. Not the way obviously you'd want to do it in a production scenario, but
yeah, but I think you're right.
But I think that's where we're going wrong, and I think also that also means thinking back to the code that's written for the game server. I think as this was a proof of concept,
but it didn't get borked though.
That's true. It did. So,
or at least it doesn't tell us that it's borked.
Right. Which is equally as likely at this point.
Okay, so let's see.
But I don't see that it actually specifies any credentials. You can also turn off the broker CR, the custom resource, has an option require login, and you can set that to false. So that might be the first thing to do.
Where does that
go? Under the
go?
deployment plan.
Yeah.
There's an entry in lower camel case, require login. Oh, so yeah, camel case, capital letter.
Sorry.
: space false.
Like
and this should mean that the username and password as we see generated in the secret should not be required.
Okay. Let's do a couple things. Let's see. Topology. The AMQ broker operator. We want to go to the brokers. We want to go to the broker. We want to go to the YAML. We want to add require login. Nope. Oh boy. Sorry, it's like Vim key bindings in VS Code copy paste buffer. All right, if I save this, and then we go back to the nope, it's the wrong place. Topology. If we go to the broker operator and look at its logs, what it says is
it's still ready.
It's kind of doing the same thing, like it's looking at stateful step 1.
Yeah, so there's a bug in a library we depend on where they start their indexing at 1. And that's where that log message comes from.
Okay.
So that actually does mean
if I refresh the user interface for ActiveMQ, does it say somewhere that it's configured for whatever we just configured?
Just scroll down. It might be in here. For require login. I don't know if it's there or no. Yeah, because that's the addresses. Yeah, there isn't an easy way to tell right here, I don't think.
Well, there's another easy way to tell. We can just.
So you can tell that the
go look and see if when we connect, if it blows up or not.
Yeah.
Here's the.
But you should be able to check to see if the broker itself rebooted, right? Because you should be able to tell what. It's like in this case, it didn't, right?
Yeah. Should
I kill the operator? Yeah, well, if you kill that pod, the pod should restart. And then it should also have the latest configuration.
There it is. All right, let's see what happens when I refresh the page. Okay, it's not ready yet, which is why we got a 503. All right, it's ready now. Well, we got no error and no, oh, no, we still got a 503. Aha, it's busy doing things. Try again. Nope, still got an error.
Okay, so that's not the reason in that case.
Or that flag didn't take effect.
Right. I'm looking to see now how we can verify that that actually got applied. Because I've got a running.
Let me do one other thing here. Let me do what we did the old way, or the do the nuclear option again, because why not? Because no lives depend on it. All right, so our broker is coming up again. I'm just waiting for it to start. Gonna look at the, not every broker will support binary messages out of the box. Publishing binary messages, receiving binary messages, JSON. Knowledge, transactions. It's a pretty good library, like does all the things. Debug, that might be nice. All right, we are running. Where's our logs? Here's our logs. Okay, cool. Error. Bummer.
Okay, so still didn't work.
It's weird because like I had this working before in the old Ruby lobby stomp code.
Right.
I think I was even using this library. Let me dig back into that. Git history. I want to look at the app.rb and then look at the Git history. Moves from Sinatra streaming. Oh, I went straight to AMQP. I don't think I ever used Stomp. Bummer. Well, I'm running out of ideas for connecting to the Stomp client with Stomp.
Yeah, so if you look at the broker, if you force the pod to restart, which I think we did, right? If you look at the very top of the log.
Even more top?
Yeah, at the very, very top. You can see what the arguments are that are passed. So essentially the way it works at the moment is that when the broker container starts up in the pod, there's an instance of the broker created, and these flags are passed through. So as you can see there, the require login did take effect because the flag was passed to the create to allow anonymous access. So that shouldn't be the issue.
Well, so the disconnect comes after the error. So what is this error? Is that actually an error, or is that like a?
Yeah. So the interesting thing is, so all of the errors from the broker are named like that, or at least all the important ones, I think. inside the broker itself in the Java code. But I don't know that we have a singular document which lays out what they mean, which means that the reference point would probably be the source code, which I'll take a look through here now.
Yeah. It's actually, it says it's just a warning though.
Okay, there you go. Oh, so Wildfly has a, so Wildfly is the upstream of EAP. And so both Wildfly and the downstream EAP.
Oh, is it because
consume
maybe
broker.
we don't have an address, so it doesn't do anything. So let me go a little further here.
See, so in this case, you can see they use the old school JMS isms. So a topic would be the equivalent of a multicast address.
Okay.
And so, and you can see even like the way that the game server is written talking about destinations is the way they talk about it here as well, right? So if you create an address called special that's multicast.
Well, we want an address. Like, I don't care if the game server rejects the message. Like, we just want to connect to try to send something that the game server would see.
Right, because you want to send the command.in in that case still.
Yeah.
Is that
so
how
we would
the
need,
Stomp server is connected
sorry, let
at
me
the
go
moment?
back to the docs here. So we need a generate binary data, U8 int array. Well, I guess I don't care. So the destination is going to be what?
Command.in. So the tricky part is that some of the JMS clients in the past used to assume prefixes on the destination in order to tell the client what kind of destination it was attempting to talk to. So it may be the case that we need to add a prefix configuration to have the older style work. Undefined.
Let's see. So I put a message or tried to. We didn't get any kind of error. No log got written here either.
Right. So it didn't make it to
But if I look here at command.in.
So you do have a one connection count there at the moment, right? Which is likely the game server.
No messages, 0, 0, 0, 0.
I mean, can we validate it works with like telnet first and send a message?
No, because it's not TCP.
Yeah.
Well, it is TCP.
Oh, sorry, it's not.
But if you knew how to type stomp, you could telnet to the port and talk stomp to it, because the whole idea is that stomp stands for simple text-oriented messaging protocol.
Do I even have telnet?
But but I lost my ability to speak in stomp a long time ago.
Yeah, but I mean, we would at least connect.
Right, that's correct.
Yeah, so you could do telnet and then the address and then the port,
which would be the route, or internally would be the service.
Well, I mean, it complained. Like, we're definitely connecting to the broker, but we already knew we were connecting to the broker. The issue is
actually getting it to do anything.
Yeah. So
that's your web console.
Web thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, we can get there. It's just we're not stomping
yet. We're not speaking in the right way.
So you send the text command connect, and then the login and passcode, and then you send a control byte, which is a null.
Enter stomp command using telnet.
Yeah, that's that null command at the bottom.
Control at. How the hell is that? Control shift 2?
Yeah. So when you telnet to do the connect and then do the login and the passcode, because even though it it didn't like that.
Doesn't even like that.
So then it may not be the client, because this should work.
Because the other thing is, too, we're passing through HA proxy, right?
Yes. That's true. So this probably would not work. Because that may be HA proxy that's saying that we're issuing a bad request.
That's correct. And the way to check that would be to check the debug logs of HA proxy, but you need to restart it in debug mode or patch the config to turn on debug logging. And of course, in your container, you don't have any useful tools really, right?
Yeah, not usually. So we're back to trying to find a functional Stomp client.
Or check HA proxy to see what HA proxy thinks about what we're doing.
I don't think it doesn't care what we're doing.
Well, the traffic could be being stopped at the OpenShift router, in which case it might not get to the broker in that case.
Well, then the question is like which router, and it's not
because
it's not going to tell us anything. And there's every other thing we're doing with it is going through the router, so probably not. Let's see, Stomp.
Yeah. So really, I mean, what this comes down to in a way is that what we really need is an easy to run container that allows us to test the connectivity to be sure that it's correct, right?
Probably not one on Quay, but I'll search just for giggles. Oh, I gotta love when search tools like don't. Like I searched for Stomp client, NFS client is not even close.
No.
Theirs isn't any better. Jesus, Mary. How about just Stomp?
So is that route publicly routable?
Yeah.
I mean, I could, in theory, spin up the old client and see if it works.
Project. I just find it amazing that we're having this much trouble finding a Stomp client. I'll put it in the Zoom chat, I guess. I can't even. How do I find it? Really? You can't access the chat? There it is. Jeez. Does anybody on Restream know how to Stomp? I'll paste it in the chat just for giggles. Apparently, we've been reported to the FBI by Paul.
Good.
Because we're in Volition of law. I'm pretty sure Volition is a game studio, but whatever.
It is. Yeah.
We need the marketing. We need the exposure.
No overview available. This is awful. Where's the Carlton Farms pickup? Oh, Lord.
And it is port. What port are we using?
80.
Stomp. 80.
Is that right? 80 for the service? Not 5673?
It's 80.
Oh, right, because it comes from HA proxy. Yeah, that's right. Not internally.
Python 3.7. Let's try this. Podman run ITRM Python 3.7.
Do you want to drop the full route name in chat? So I can copy and paste it. Oh, you did. Perfect.
Yes, sir.
All right.
And I put it on Restream too, just for giggles. Just waiting for this Python image to run. All right. Oh, why did it do that? That's annoying.
Click to reply. That's not cool.
Pip install Stompy. Interesting. That also doesn't work. Oh, is it not Stompy? Is it just stomp? Pip install stomp.py. Lovely. I probably could have done that in the beginning. Hey, look at that. Nope. Also didn't work. All right, let's try this. Pip install stomp. Stomp.py. That worked. Python. All right. Import stomp. Connection equals stomp connection. Connection connect. What's the server? Introduction to stomp. Oh, there it is. Establishing a connection. Aha. Con equals stomp connection. We want the server. Copy link address. And then port is 80. Close paren, close bracket, close paren. Con.connect. User password. Age equals true. Connection failed.
So I think in my case, I may have gotten connected to the broker, but not the game server. Because I just ran it up here in Unity. Just check the broker.
Do you want to share your screen?
I can, but there's really not much to see. All we see is that the connect button goes and switches to join, which then the join is the next thing where it actually talks to the game server after connecting to the broker. So,
well, I don't see an error. Sorry, I don't see like a happy message in the.
No. So if I can just bring back up the log for 1 second.
Yeah, give me a second. I'm going to go to the actual game server log as well. Oh, but the game server doesn't log anything, right?
Right, very little. So just note the timer, 2026-03-190. Yeah, so if I've connected at this point, then we're not getting any notification. So in the case of the old broker, straight active MQ, we would get a message there saying that a connection was accepted. But in the case of Artemis, I don't know that that's the case. So that doesn't really help us any.
Let me look for the actual login and see if that works. I just want the regular user, right? Not the cluster user.
Correct.
No, also doesn't work. So 0 Stomp clients appear to want to connect, and I don't really know what to do about that.
Yeah, one of the creators or authors of Stomp.py has a developer.redhat blog that has some useful debug default Python stuff.
Don't need a stomp acceptor. We have a stomp acceptor. Download the stomp server client. Add to the Python libraries. That's definitely not right.
Yeah, so HornetQ is the old one that's a part of Artemis, but is not Artemis.
Let's see what happens if we do this. Stomp connection has no attribute start. So that's definitely not going to work either. Hey, that worked when I didn't supply a username and password, or at least it didn't explode.
Anonymous, right?
Yeah. So what did I want to publish on?
Command.in, yep.
Oh, but the server's not going to log anything.
No, but you should be able to go to the GUI of the broker and see that it was received. Like, for example, if you go to the GUI now, you should see your connection.
Maybe.
So if you go up to the top AMQ broker and you do a refresh on that, I see connection count is 1.
Where's the
refresh
button? Or am I stupid?
Yeah, just
but that could be your connection.
But that could be. That's correct.
I want to publish to a queue. I don't want a subscriber. I want a producer. Dest. Where's Dest? Is that listener? That's okay, fine. Con subscribe.
So normally you'd be subscribing to. Yeah, so you can also subscribe to the same thing you're sending to if you really wanted to. In which case you'd receive what you send. Right, because subscribe is, hey, I want all the stuff that gets sent to it.
Interesting. So apparently con connect didn't actually connect me.
It just returned.
Connection failed.
Right, so
username none, passcode none.
So those are all the defaults, right? That's what it's saying.
Specify. Wait for the connection to complete before returning. True. Additional headers, keyword headers, connect class for addictive headers to be provided. Something. First parameter is host and ports, each containing an IP address and the port. Oh, does it have to be an IP address? Can't have to be an IP address. That'd be ridiculous. Well, remind me why anybody uses messaging again?
Real-time event communication. Nobody said it was easy to get up and running.
I mean, I don't know what to do or how to troubleshoot this further.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, like I said, there's a couple of pieces of the puzzle that could be going wrong here, right? So we could be being intercepted. Clearly, like we know for sure that the game server is not logging because there's very little logging in there. We do know that we've gotten some logging from the broker itself, but we also know that we're talking in two different semantics in the way we're talking about the address, right? Because Artemis has a new address model.
Yeah, but like we're not even to the point of connection. Like the address is almost irrelevant.
Yeah, that's
so far.
Fair.
But we also I have failed to connect in multiple different ways.
Right, but I don't know if we're getting through the proxy properly, right? Like in all our testing internally here, the only way that things work properly from the broker's point of view, and we're not, I guess, stopped at the proxy, is if you had TLS SNI configured, meaning you had certificates in play, and you configure the route to be passed through. And when
but I didn't have to do any of that for AMQ.
Right, for AMQP. Now AMQP, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the difference would be there.
From the router's perspective, nothing. Right. The router couldn't care less about HTTP, or sorry, the protocol. It's just passing you along, as far as I understand. Let me double check that though. Index. That is totally the wrong file. Env broker. And I have env development. The broker is, I was using secure.
Yep.
What did I do to set that up? I think I just changed it in the route.
And you're also using a WebSocket connection.
Yeah,
yes. Be a native concept.
That's true.
Right.
But I don't know if does it care.
So originally, the reason why Stump was chosen in the pre-AMQP time, like this was 2012, 2013, was that Stump was very browser compatible, right? And that you could use WebSocket with Stump, both from the broker's point of view, the client's point of view, and the browser's point of view.
Stump service. Oh, son of a biscuit. Come on. I want routes. Create a route. Select service. The Stump service. Secure the route. Edge termination, sure. Redirect. Why won't it let me create?
Didn't select the target port there. Oh, didn't like the capitalization.
Probably.
So in this case, when you redirect the traffic, where does it redirect the traffic to?
So redirect says if you come in as HTTP, it will upgrade you to HTTPS and force 302U in circles.
Okay. And if you're connecting secure here, but with no certificates, what is the default behavior?
Literally, I got the same exact error. It didn't care. Like I didn't get a certificate error because I've already accepted, I think, the wildcard in my browser, probably.
Okay.
But it literally is exactly the same error.
Right.
So like we were hitting the broker before with this.
Yep.
Just not
correctly
working.
Or not in a way it was understanding.
Well, I mean, we don't actually know what's wrong. Like that error is not helpful or useful. Let's go here. Unexpected string. I'm missing a colon. Oh, that's not an error.
Nope.
And so if we go back here to addresses,
Hey, you've got address size. You've got 2 messages on command.in.
Cool. So that worked.
Yep.
Apparently. Where's
and
the message? How do can I see them?
Those. Yep. There you go. Hello world and bytes.
Cool.
Awesome.
Both of those worked.
I don't know when. Oops.
So what was the missing piece here? Which is the
I have no idea. It may have worked before. I can't remember if we got an error when we did it before. I mean, at least one of the missing pieces, now there's no messages.
Right. So whatever we have right now is not the working configuration. Oh no, it says number of messages one. It just took a second to refresh. That's correct.
Yeah. The refresh behavior is
picky. It's not automatic.
So yeah, upgrading to using HTTPS with redirect maybe fixed it. Oh, you know what? That's right. Because you have to, if you don't have HTTPS,
right,
and you're speaking a raw socket protocol, the router doesn't know what to do with it.
Right.
And so when you are speaking HTTPS, if you're speaking a protocol that can use SNI where the destination packet information is known, the FQDN of the destination is known, the router's like, oh yeah, okay, cool. I don't care what's inside you. I'm just going to pass you along.
Regardless of whether or not you're actually encrypted.
Correct.
I
mean, it is encrypted because just to get to the router, you had to negotiate SSL, right? I think.
Yeah.
Because it's edge termination.
Right. That's right. I see what you're saying. So in this case, the Stomp client was SNI compliant.
Yes, I guess.
Which is a good thing, right?
Well, but the Stomp client is just the browser, and so it's really the browser.
And so I gotcha. That's right. So the browser's handling all that. Whereas if you were setting up a client yourself, you may have to do some work.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. So, for example, in the case of the broker, when we were testing the core protocol, which is a non-browser native, non-cloud native protocol, it was not SNI aware. And one of the things we had to fix, for example, when Broker 7 was released, we had to go in and actually add the SNI code to the TLS implementation of the protocol to get it to work through the OpenShift router properly.
Can we, or I don't know how long this would take or if it's even possible. So in the code for the game server,
yep,
can you add like
I can do
log message? Like,
yep.
I received something and I don't know what to do.
Yep.
Do you want to share your screen while you code that up?
Yeah, I just need to clean up. I got a lot of windows here.
Oh, okay. We've got like 10 minutes left.
Yep.
14, I guess.
10 minutes of live coding.
Yeah. I mean, not that we haven't sort of been live coding this entire time, right? And then the other question would be like, are you using some C library? I'm still sharing, so I guess I can figure it out.
So
I'm assuming that the library for talking stomp is like
so
it's this one, this ActiveMQ MCPP.
Right, yeah. So if you want, I can share.
Yeah, go for it.
Just you need to give me permission to do so.
So I have to make Derek.
Or I can drop in the URL.
And then make Roddy co-host.
And then I have to see if I can find the right window.
That's weird. I can make Derek the co-host again.
But not me.
But I can make you the host. Oh, now you can be co-host.
Okay.
I think maybe Derek had to rescind
his hostedness.
Yeah. All right, you should be the co-host now.
All right. Say share screen, host disabled attendee screen sharing. What else do I need to do?
Can you not just click the share screen button?
That's what happens. It tells me host disabled attendee screen sharing.
But you're a co-host. Do you have to like accept it?
Try now.
You cannot start screen share while the other participant is sharing.
God. All right, I just stopped.
The wonders of technology. Okay, I've got it. Desktop 4, maybe this is it.
Desktop 4. How many monitors do you have, dude?
I have 4 external monitors, and there's 3 laptops on my desk, along with 2 Mac Minis.
Oh my goodness.
It does get a little bit
I can't even get like my one laptop to happily do. Anyway, whatever.
All right, so in a second you should see.
I see an IDE with very tiny text.
Yeah, so I don't know if I can easily increase the size. I don't even know how I increase the size of the text here. Not easily, I don't think. So let's try to find. Perhaps. Yeah, that's what I tried. That was my first attempt. Or Command Plus here on Mac.
What IDE are you using?
C Lion, which is the JetBrains IntelliJ for different languages, essentially.
And we do have a question from Lily XSU, which is, Did you have to use Stomp? Eric mentioned AMQP also works. What are alternatives to working with messaging services?
Right. So in this case, Stomp was chosen like 7 years ago when this thing was put together as a proof of concept.
Yeah, we just haven't updated the code yet.
Yeah, primarily because at the time, what I wanted to do, I wanted to be able to get from Unity through a broker into the browser. And that was the most compliant protocol at the time to be able to do that. They could handle WebSockets, as well as had a client that would work in C++, which would allow me to do the backend server. We're basically making a move to AMQP, which is an ISO standard protocol, AMQP 1.0 to be exact. So the downside there is that it's TCP based and hasn't moved to being UDP based as well yet, which from a game server point of view is, okay, well, at least from a first person shooter point of view, would be seen as kind of sucky and slow. So, with my messaging engineer hat on, I would say other protocols that exist would be Core, which we kind of discussed, is an open but not standardized protocol from Hornet-Q days. Then there's MQTT, which of course is your IoT native kind of protocol for low-powered embedded devices. Then there's the wire format, OpenWire, which was used in ActiveMQ upstream 5.11 onward, and was basically used with the JMS Java specification for messaging. So like those are options that you could use, but generally aren't your go-to for game servers, right? Like typically game servers want to be as close to the middle as possible, really fast, minimal packet sizes. So in the past, that just meant raw UDP, right? Or you maybe use Valve's game networking sockets, which is like a reliable UDP implementation. so that you get some TCP type semantics, but at the same time you get the speed when you need it of raw UDP. In our case here, a large part of what we're setting out to do is litmus test our technologies and say, are the technologies we have at our disposal suitable for a use case for gaming? And I think the answer in general is yes. And AMQP is nice because it's not just de facto open, it's actually truly an ISO standard. So if we were creating like an open game server, it's a good choice, with the exception of the head-of-line blocking problem for TCP, which in the real internet is a real genuine problem that UDP gets around. Looking forward, AMQP is going to be building in a UDP support so that it can support other business type protocols like CTP for the telco space. And then in the future, we may move to using something like QUIC, QUIC, which is currently being standardized at the IETF and is going to form the basis of HTTP3. And it is a UDP-based protocol, which enables us to avoid some of the TCP-based problems, but as well get some standardization. So I can see a future in which AMQP moves to UDP and to being available over QUIC, and not just something like WebSocket that's TCP-based, if that makes sense.
So the TLDR for you.
Very thorough description.
Yeah. The TLDR for you, Lily, is Stomp is our protocol that we're going to go with for now, simply because it works with everything, does everything we need it to do, and we're not going to sit around waiting for AMQP to use UDP.
Yeah, we're going to transition to AMQP, but the original code that we're seeing here on the screen was all written using a client that was pre-AMQP, essentially. So if we look here, we can see even in the names of the environment variables, for example, we can see we're using the same type of terminology that was used when we were looking at the Stomp documentation. We're talking about destinations instead of addresses, right? I'm just going to go and see how this gets set up here to see exactly where the command gets received in the command consumer, to see if we can see where the event gets fired. So here we can see that we're setting up basically an event. So this is kind of a C# style event mechanism, but being used in C++ through the POCO library. So if anybody's familiar with Boost, the POCO project is kind of a standard open library of C++ functionality, similar in some ways to the functionality provided by Boost, but perhaps not as heavyweight as what Boost might be seen as. So for example, here we're looking at, so essentially we can see right here that the event response from the command consumer to handle a received CMS message event as it comes in as a bytes message is to simply on queue the message for processing and not necessarily document its arrival, right? So even if we were to do something like see out. And of course, we need to include all the appropriate standard in, standard out stuff. If I could remember what it is, STD out.
You could probably look in the other place where it talks about starting up.
So one of the tricky parts here is that, so going back to this client, for a long while, I had been writing C++ extremely heavily. Between 2008 and 2012, I probably wrote, a few 100,000 lines or even more of my own code for my own engines and stuff for the mobile games that I put out. But most recently here at Red Hat, I've been writing all in Go. So I actually took out my trusty old Strustrip book within the last few days
Nice.
to refresh myself on all the particulars that now I've lost the goisms. I got to start inserting semicolons and stuff automatically, which have gone the way of the dinosaur in my typing. I got to build up some more muscle memory again.
Elkaran was asking if you're looking for IO stream.
Yeah, that would be a good start, wouldn't it? I don't know. Will see out be in there? See out will probably get there transitively, right? I think it's just std out. Is that right? Like I said, my muscle memory here is quite long gone. There we go.
Yeah, in server PPP, you have an include of IO stream.
There you go. Like I said, long forgotten.
Thanks, Elkaran 23.
So now I need to actually do the build. So the tricky part here about being on the Mac is that I can do my local build no problem, and that will work like a charm. That doesn't actually really help us at the moment, right? What we need is
well, it would if you could just prove that it's doing the thing.
Right.
Because once you prove that it's doing the thing, if you push the code up, I can actually I can create an OpenShift build.
Right. And I can create a container on my Linux box here. I just need to actually modify the code somewhere else. Just give me 1 second. I'll do that. And I'll push up a container for you, given that we're running low on time.
That works as well.
Right. So I tend to use tmux as my terminal multiplexer.
Yeah. Actually, I'm looking.
Are you still seeing C-Line?
Yeah. I'm looking at your image.
Yep.
But I don't see where your image actually builds anything.
My image doesn't build anything. Like, this is very much a duplicate. I build it on my local box and pushed it to Quay.
So what is the Docker file doing?
It builds a container image based upon Fedora 30, brings in all the appropriate libraries, and literally brings in the binary that I've already pre-placed on my local operating system that I've pre-built.
So it doesn't actually build the binary.
Right, next step. That's correct.
Got it.
So if we just check here, what file did I modify there?
Well, technically we're out of time, so.
Yeah, so again, this is all pretty rudimentary, right? And so the next step would then be to have it build automatically on OpenShift, automatically do some automation for the build, include it, et cetera, right?
Automate the automation.
Automate the automation, yes.
You could probably, if you could get a container that in its build process would build the C binary, you could make Quay just auto build the repo whenever pushes happen.
Right.
And we call that CI and CD in the biz.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thanks, Roddy. Thanks, Derek, for struggling through all of that. I wish I had remembered about I guess, Roddy, you sort of alluded to the SNI thing, and it didn't register in my brain when you said it. But kind of to recap a little bit of today, right? We got the game server image running, and we actually sort of got it to talk to the broker, and we showed a little bit more about kind of using the AMQ operator and, making all those things talk and work and walk. And so really at this point now we're getting closer to getting a functional game server that we can then talk to. And then it just becomes sort of this back and forth, the iteration of make a little bit of the client to do the thing, and then add more function in the game server, and then make a little bit of the client and then the game server. And at some point that'll get integrated into the data grid, where we actually pull player information and store player information about what's going on in the universe into the data grid. And so with that, I bid all of you farewell. Happy holidays to everyone, no matter what you celebrate, or if you don't celebrate anything, then happy winter time when everybody else is celebrating. You get to slack off or something. I don't know. Whatever. But we'll see you again in 2021. It will be a new year, and we finally get to kick this year out the door, which for many folks is
the sooner the better.
Something they're looking forward to. And so we'll continue with this series in 2021, and we look forward to having something that maybe some of y'all can play with us sometime soon.
Yeah,
so cheers and thank you.
All right, see you folks.
We'll talk to y'all.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks for being here.
Now I gotta find this and do outro.